Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a Yankee player's teen son who mysteriously died on vacation in Costa Rica, a babysitter who was checking under the bed for monsters, only to come across something far more scary, a person who died from rabies after receiving a transplant, and a 66-year-old who just gave birth. We have all that and more on today's episode, so let's get started with this Yankee player's son.
Yeah, so former Yankees player Brett Gardner, he was on vacation with his family in Costa Rica. So they're saying that they went out to dinner at this restaurant near the resort, and when they got back, a couple people in the family got sick. So the resort then sent out a medical team with a licensed doctor over to treat them, and in the middle of the night, their 14-year-old son ended up dying.
So, did they ever say what the medical team had said that night when they saw all of these people?
So I first saw it being reported as food poisoning, and an official had said it was due to asphyxiation from food intoxication, but now that doesn't seem to be the case.
So, there's a couple different things that you could think about, especially when people say they ate and then they got sick afterwards, the person that died, especially. So, I think it's pretty safe that we could rule out something like anaphylaxis, which would be something you would think about if a person had a peanut allergy and was exposed to something they shouldn't be exposed to. Not that it's 100% not possible, but when you're talking about multiple people being sick from eating the same type of food, then you think more of, okay, it's some kind of bacteria that was present in the food that all of these people ate, which caused them all to get sick shortly after they ate a meal. Um, so when you're thinking about that, there's talk that there was a lot of vomiting going on between the other people as well as this boy. And in fact, whoever came and took care of him, I guess, in the middle of the night or whenever they decided to call emergency services to come, they had said they were saying it was a nearby urgent care that had treated him. I don't know how things work in Costa Rica, but essentially they showed up and they had to do CPR on the kid because he was unresponsive, and they said that he was basically clinically dead when they arrived. They said that there was indication of vomiting present when they got to the hotel room, and it was in his bed actually, but they couldn't confirm that it was from him. So I guess initially with that presentation, people would assume that possibly he asphyxiated, which would mean that he vomited and then he inhaled it again. And it got caught in his lungs and caused him to die that way by lack of oxygen. But I guess when they did the autopsy, they didn't see any evidence of that, at least grossly or by looking at it with the human eye. Now, they still do need to look at the lungs under the microscope in order to determine that that wasn't the case. But usually, if somebody dies from that, there's going to be evidence of it right away. So now, so they basically ruled out asphyxia because of the vomit. They ruled out anaphylaxis probably for the most part because again, that's something that you could see at autopsy. You could see swelling in the throat. Definitely, that would be something you could see as well. So they probably ruled out those two things. So now they're just trying to see, I guess, what kind of infection these people had because you have to think there is a rare chance that it could be from something else too. When you just think about a whole bunch of people that are eating food at the same time and get sick pretty soon afterwards, you think of it could be like chemicals in the food, like actual poison, or it could be a bacteria. So that's what people like epidemiologists do is they try to find the source of like where this all happened. So they're going to interview all the people that were there and find out what they ate, and then they're going to go to the restaurant and see what they ate and see what they all ate the same of and try to determine if it was from there. The thing is sometimes when you get a bacterial infection from food, it might not present for days actually. So even though they all started getting sick around the same time after they ate that one meal, doesn't necessarily mean it's from that meal, depending on what the bacteria is. Now, the good news is that they could test his poop and then test his blood and everything at autopsy, as well as the people that are still alive that might still have the infection. And they can determine what the bacteria is, and each bacteria acts differently. So some will infect people within 30 minutes, others will be 48 hours, and then they'll be able to really track back to what restaurant they were eating at that particular time. Another thing to take into consideration when people are on trips like this in somewhere like Costa Rica, when I know I've never been there, I really want to go there, but I always see that people are in these, in the water all the time, right? And there can also be kinds of weird bacteria that you could ingest the water accidentally and get sick from that too. Whatever it is, it happened, whether it was a chemical poisoning or a bacteria, they all got it around the same time and all started exhibiting similar symptoms. So, as of right now, we're going to just have to wait and see what the toxicology shows. So, the toxicology will just be checking for actual drugs, but thinking that they were treated the night before, correct? At the hotel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't even imagine what medication they would have possibly given them, because they kind of want food poisoning sometimes to run its course. So they might have given them Pepto or something like that. And like, listen, people can be allergic to medication. People have died from taking Tylenol, but it's just so rare. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm thinking that that's probably not going to show much either. He probably just died as a result of the infection. And another thing to consider is that, let's say, for example, the family was at a restaurant and the son got a dessert, and then other people were like, "Let me try that." But he ate most of it and they had like a bite of it. Sometimes they might not seem as sick as he would, depending on how much he ingested. Another thing is that we don't know the son's medical history. So, let's say, for example, like my daughter Lucia is considered immunosuppressed because of some of the medications that she's on for her bone disorder, and that would make her more likely to get a more severe reaction from something like this, rather than the other people that might have been a little bit healthier. So we don't know if he had anything like that either. um Throwing up like that a lot causes severe dehydration. There's just like lots of different things to consider. So unfortunately, we just have to wait until more results come out, because the authorities over there in Costa Rica had said that the toxicology, histology, which is looking at the slides under the microscope, which it appears that they may not have even done yet, and neuropathology, which is looking at the brain, will be delayed because there's such a high demand for autopsies, because apparently there's like an increase of homicides there, and they're just overwhelmed with autopsies. So they're saying it might take months to actually get the results.
Yeah, it's just really sad for this family where, you're trying to be on a trip that's fun and then something like this that's tragic just happens and then you're not really getting answers right away either.
Yeah, and I think and this happened to me while traveling in America, when we drove from New Jersey to Las Vegas over Christmas time, and Lucia got sick. She started coughing a lot, and I was kind of like, all right, whatever, she's got a virus. And then all of a sudden it was just like, all right, we have a problem. We have to go somewhere. And we were in the middle of New Mexico, which is just not anywhere near populated around here, where there's just an urgent care on every corner. And it's scary when you're traveling and you're not in your area and you just don't even have access to the things that you normally have access to. But at least being in America, you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to go to this Walgreens and hopefully it's the same as the one near my house. Like, there's like similar things. Oh, I'm going to go to urgent care and they have similar way of doing things than my urgent care does. But when you're traveling to other countries, just things are handled so much differently. So the reason I'm saying this is because maybe if they were, let's say they were in Florida, for example, on a similar type of vacation, they might have considered his condition to be severe enough, or the people around him, that they needed to go to the hospital. And when they had, and I don't know what the deal is, because this seems to be like a really fancy resort. It said it was $2,000 a night. I mean, that's a lot. Most people don't go on vacations that cost that much money, right? So they might, and again, this is like a little bit of a VIP special treatment thing, like, oh, we'll just send a doctor or somebody to your room to help you instead of you having to leave and go to a hospital. and that could be involved in it too, because that kid could have. I mean, like, I'm thinking if he was dead in the middle of the night, hours after he was seen by a medical professional, he was either worse off than he seemed to be and needed to have more intervention, or I mean, the asphyxia thing would have made sense just because that's something that just happens right away. It's a quick thing. So I am just really curious about how this is going to go down.
Yeah. This next one is like total nightmare
Th-
fuel.
It really is, right? And I saw this last night and I was just thinking, Jesus, like I can't believe that this really happened. But tell them about the story.
So this kid goes to the babysitter and says there's a monster hiding under my bed, which how many times do children do this, right? So they're like, okay. She's like, all right, I'm going to go upstairs and show you there's nothing to worry about. She goes upstairs, looks under the bed, and then is face to face with the man.
It's just unbelievable, right?
Yeah, because
God,
how
could
many
you
times?
imagine like the jump scare that chick got? Jesus. I'd be like, cause I wouldn't even expect it to be a human. So it's just like, I don't even know what you would think, but what, like, what was happening? Did they say, cause I don't really remember in the article if they said anything about the parents, like where were the parents at the time? I mean, it's normal that there's a babysitter at the house and the parents aren't home. I'm just wondering, usually just strange men don't break into people's houses and hide under the bed. So like there's more to this story.
Well, this is what was weird is it said he once lived on the property, but there was a protection order issued against him to stay away from it. So like who was he? Like
So,
was he
well, exactly. Like we need more details, okay? Okay, so is it possible that he's some kind of a friend or family member? Like he lived with those people?
he had to have been connected to them in some capacity. Like was he a roommate? Was he a family friend? Was he a relative?
So I wonder if the kid just heard noises and was like, "There's something in my room." Oh my
Well, how many
god.
times are there stories where like if you're sitting in your house, you might if you have like an attic or something, you might just think that you like hear something, but you're like, oh, it's probably just the wind or whatever. And then you see these stories that are like, man's been living in woman's attic for 34 years. And you're like, how?
Yeah, it is a crazy story, and of course we'll never hear anything more about it. So, we always have so many questions, and the way they write these stories, you're just like, dude, you gotta like give us way more information. You can't leave us hanging like this.
No, and this next one's crazy too, because this anesthesiologist and his wife were on this hiking trail in Hawaii. So he's saying he just wanted to take a photo with her and she didn't want to. So then he allegedly attempted to throw her off the hiking trail, struck her in the head with a rock. There's also something about him trying to poke her with a syringe on the scene.
I guess everybody thinks that this is crazy because this guy has like no indication that he was like this, no history of this anywhere,
But that
no
doesn't mean
crimes.
anything.
I know it doesn't, but sometimes if you ever think about people that are in this situation, like this dude is like one of the highest levels of physicians. He works at a really prestigious place. And think about his coworkers getting interviewed and hearing this story that some people would be shocked. Like sometimes there's certain people in your life that if you heard this you'd be like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
You know,
of course.
and that's all they're saying here is like they're surprised. They think it's unusual. And honestly, like I guess they know the story because the wife's not dead and she told them what happened. I don't know how she ever got to the hospital. I guess maybe there were witnesses or something, but she like for not taking a picture, it seems kind of weird.
Well, if you think about if there's domestic violence going on in the house, little things like that tend to trigger an abuser. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really surprising, but I don't know if they have a history of that or what, but I guess they were at an elevation of 1,200 feet and they were saying that the quote wind so strong that one could lean against a wall of wind. So I guess at first it wasn't unclear how she like fell, but then when they found her, she was in critical condition, but she's still alive and she was able to tell her side of the story. And this is what's being alleged against him.
It reminds me of this case that we had when we were doing this podcast in the gross room. Do you remember? Again, it was a doctor who drove off a cliff with his kids and his wife in the car.
Yeah.
Could you imagine first responders like rescuing these people and going to the hospital and they finally start talking and they say that he intentionally did this on purpose? it's just it there's other stories coming up. I don't know if it's in this today's episode or tomorrow's episode that you think about what these poor doctors have to go through in the hospital because you're treating someone that you innocently think fell down on vacation, right? And then all of a sudden you hear these stories. It must really be hard for the doctors to hear things like this as well, to know that someone intentionally hurt someone like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing is he's been suspended from his practice while this is being investigated. So I really wonder if they're going to turn up, like, if he's had any history of abuse or whatever. Because, I mean, this type of thing, let's say that he's innocent and all this, like, this doesn't go away. Everybody's going to remember that you're that guy that pushed his wife off the cliff, even if he didn't really do it.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad actually to think that a person would work. We say this all the time, like you work so hard to do this great amazing thing and become a physician with your life. Like why would you I guess it's not really an argument because it's not like any just because someone has a good job doesn't mean that they shouldn't throw their life away, but anybody shouldn't do anything like this. It's just really bizarre to me, but it's interesting though when you hear stories like this because especially with domestic violence, like it's not just limited to a certain socioeconomic group. It goes across all spans of the poorest people, the richest people, race, everything. Like
The
it just goes,
prettiest people, the
yeah.
ugliest people.
And you know when you hear, I was listening to an interview with Gabby Petito's parents and talking about there's just like a lot of interesting things. I'm glad that they're going on all of these shows and they're talking about domestic violence and trying to make something, at least educate people in the horrible thing that they had to experience with their daughter's death. Um, but some of the signs they were going through the 911 or the footage from the Moab Police Department and
Mhm.
talking about just some of these signs that she was showing when she was talking and things she was saying, but even hand movements and stuff. And I just thought that was it's so interesting about how many people it affects, but people obviously don't talk about it. And so yeah, like once they investigate this particular case too, I'm sure that they're going to find all of this stuff out because that's not, if you're with Ricky on vacation, like he's not just going to throw you over the edge. There's like way more to the story.
Can you imagine being in the surgical bed, like about to undergo anesthesia, and the anesthesiologist comes in and is like, all right, we're gonna like start setting you up, and it's this person that was in the news for possibly throwing their
No,
wife off of
I
the
mean,
cliff?
no, done
No, I'm just
regardless.
saying if
Like,
he gets off as innocent, like you just will
well,
forever remember his face being associated with this
the
story.
scary thing is though that we've talked about this before. Remember we were talking about that case where the doctor took out this guy's liver instead of this guy's spleen? And
Yeah.
then we found out that there was another case that he took out the wrong organ or something like that. There was a major mistake. The thing is that oftentimes people don't really research the physicians that are doing their procedures and stuff and really find out go on medical boards and find out like if these people have any claims against them or anything. The scary thing is like once if this guy was able to get off, like you might not even know about it as a patient.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have surgery, at least I've only had a couple little procedures here and there. um, but like I don't know who the anesthesiologist is going to be until they come in and they start talking to you. It's not like you have a choice, do
Well,
you?
that's what I was just gonna say. Like, let's say you do the research, but can you be like, well, I don't want that person because they had bad press? Like,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
think it works like
it
that.
doesn't. Like I feel like even when I had the kids and stuff, I mean, and I had two horrible experiences with anesthesia at both hospitals, but like even I feel like you just get who's there that day. I don't know that you have a choice. So it's just a really interesting thing to think about. It's just the same as like you get x-rays, right? Like you don't get to pick what radiologist looks at your x-rays. You don't get to pick what pathologist looks at your stuff. It's just like that's just how it is. So
Yeah. All right, so 2 years ago, this OnlyFans chick was performing a fetish session with a client when he became unresponsive and she had to call 911. And just now, 2 years later, she's being arrested for his murder.
I wonder what's taking so long. Just because, so I guess apparently they go through all of the emails and everything and the correspondence between the people, and he had said that he wanted to get saran wrapped like a mummy with a pair of woman's boots glued to his feet, which is these are very interesting requests, and adhesive poured onto his eyes to seal them shut. That's what he wanted, and he paid someone $11,000 to do this to him.
But
And
I guess,
like,
yeah,
that's her thing on OnlyFans. I didn't even, like, look into her, but I guess that's I didn't even
well,
really realize OnlyFans models actually, like, met the people that they were talking to.
well, I guess it could cross as like, cam girl content with like this girl's obviously like a dominatrix of some sort, right? Or maybe she just did dominatrix like sessions with this guy. So like you're saying, he requested for him to be wrapped up in saran wrap and have the boots and have pour adhesive onto his eyes to seal them shut. But he actually ended up with duct tape over his mouth, a plastic bag over his head, and more saran wrap around that, and then duct tape wrapped around his face and head. So basically, he just suffocated.
Yeah, but, like, why did it take them so long to arrest her? Because there's no other reason that
That's what I'm
that would
confused about.
happen. And really, even if they found emails that said, "I want you to do this to me," you as a human have a responsibility, like, not to kill someone if they ask you to, and you have to be dumb to know that this wouldn't kill someone. They have all these warnings about plastic bags, putting it over a baby's head, all this stuff, and it's like, don't go in a sleeping bag with it zippered, and you're talking about putting all of that stuff plus taping it on his head so he can't even get it off. Well, he couldn't anyway, right? Because his body was saran wrapped like a mummy, but even if he asked you to do that and you did it, you should still be charged with his homicide.
I am with you. I don't understand why this investigation took so long because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, they could have seen their communication via email, I feel like, pretty quickly. And it was obvious what happened, like what he requested isn't what happened. And let's say he even requested it the day of, like, she still is responsible in some capacity for it happening. So, like, why did it take 2 full years? I would understand a couple months if they were waiting to look through like phone records, everything like that. But 2 years is insane.
Well, and they also found a video on her phone using a vibrator, and in the background, he was laying with the plastic bag and saran wrap on his head. Like, so she was not only getting paid $11,000 to do this to him, but then she was making content and also, I guess I don't know if she was making it for just him or if she was planning on uploading that content to her OnlyFans page, which is fine. I mean, if she wants to double dip, it's fine. The problem is that she killed him. Like, I, I I don't really know what else to say. So I'm glad she finally got. Did it say or she just got arrested, so we don't even know like what she's actually getting from this,
No, but
like
she's gonna
time
be in
wise.
court like next month, so I'm sure there'll be more about it. I just can't believe they knew she was there. They knew exactly what happened. It seems like the medical examiner knew it was a homicide from the start. So just like what took so long?
I have no idea.
This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we have the Gross Room on sale right now. It's only $20 for a whole entire year of gross. So that is thousands of cases that you get to see, videos, photos, all sorts of stuff, like the things that we're talking about on this episode and every episode. We have plenty of fetish type murder situations, just for an example of a story we just talked about. Um, we have high profile or celebrity death dissections every week that we put out in the beginning of the week. So last week we did Ruby Frank, part 1 and 2, because there was so much information, and it's sparking a lot of interesting discussion in the Gross Room, which it should, because the case is just really crazy. So check that one out. And next week we're doing a really crazy case of a mistaken identity where two females were misidentified, and it's just a really crazy. It's just a really upsetting story. One of the most upsetting stories that I've ever written about, honestly, on the website.
Yeah, head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up.
Okay. This is outrageous to me, this story. I sent it to one of my friends who is a transplant nurse, and she can't believe it either.
Yeah, so this patient ended up getting a kidney transplant back in December and then contracted rabies through the donated organ. Are they not testing for that?
No, they're not. But I'll tell you why. There's a reason. So when if you look up rabies right now in the United States, how many people get rabies and die? Because it's like 100% fatal. 10 people in the whole entire United States die from rabies every single year. 10 people. So they're not going to test organs for it because the chances of somebody getting it are apparently not ever going to happen because of this, but it's so rare. I'm sure there's like not even any cases of it, or if there are, there's not that many of this ever happening.
So like, all right, so the person who donated their organs, so they got rabies obviously, and then how long does that take to present?
So this is what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking when you get bit by an animal that has rabies, it takes anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks to start showing signs of the infection. But there's documentation of this taking days, weeks, and even a month to show up as an infection. So this person, I'm thinking that the person that donated the organ could have possibly been bit by an animal and didn't go to the hospital and get treatment and get the rabies vaccine when they went to the hospital, and then died maybe in a car accident shortly thereafter within a couple weeks of that bite. And that's how it went down. So the person wasn't having any symptoms yet of rabies, but had it inside of their body. Because the only other option is that this person got the transplant and then went home and got rabies themselves and then died. And I don't think that's likely because this person had the transplant and died within a month. And like we said, the lowest point of the incubation period is 3 weeks. So if you get a transplant, you're in the hospital. I don't know how long you would be in the hospital if there was any complications or whatever, but you're in the hospital for a little while after you get a transplant. So there wouldn't even have physically been time for this patient to go home and interact with an animal to get bit and then go back to the hospital. Furthermore, this person lives in Michigan and had the transplant surgery done in Ohio, and they said that the person died at the same place where they had the transplant, which means to me that it's possible that that person never even left the hospital after they had the transplant and started exhibiting super weird symptoms that, these transplant nurses and doctors take care of these people all the time, and they know what they're looking for, which is rejection of the organ is the biggest thing, or infection. And then this person starts showing these symptoms that you wouldn't normally see in those types of patients, including like respiratory arrest and seizures and paralysis and things that like would be weird to happen in a normal transplant person. And that might be how they were keyed in that this was happening. So let's say, for example, the donor had lived another couple weeks, maybe they would have started exhibiting the symptoms and been one of the 10 people that died in this country from it, which is still outrageous to me.
Can you just imagine having the bad luck of contracting rabies and then dying in a car accident? If this is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. But I'm just saying that because the reason I'm saying a car accident is because if a person went to the hospital and was exhibiting any of these symptoms, they would not be a candidate for the transplant.
Yeah.
So they weren't having anything like this before they died, and that makes me think, okay, they just died in some kind of an accident, like a drop dead situation. And what they do, the organ donor centers, they determine there's a bunch of different factors. They do test for certain bacteria and viruses for sure. but like common ones, right? They're not going to test for rabies because it's not common. They're not going to test for polio. Like they just won't test for like rando things, Ebola. Like, come on, it's just not happening. So they test for the most common ones. Sometimes they look at pieces of an organ under the microscope to determine if it looks healthy. They ask a lot of questions to the family and friends, like were they sick? Did they have any of this? Did they have any of that? Um, and that's it. Like, I don't think that they did anything wrong here. I just think this is like such a freak thing. I just don't see how else it could have possibly happened.
Yeah. I do think it's just it's so weird to talk about because it's so rare in general, and then like you just had like everything go wrong at the exact same moment with this case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember back in September we talked about a case where there was this boy that had a bat in his bedroom and then he ended up dying from rabies, and it was like his parents didn't even know. They got the bat out of the house. The parents didn't even know that the bat had bit him because their teeth can leave like pinpoint little marks and they just didn't see it. So, uh, it's just totally possible that this person just got bit by an animal. Like you have to go to the hospital when you get bit by an animal because they have drugs that they can give you, and it's called post-exposure prophylaxis. It is nearly 100% effective if it's administered within 48 hours of a bite. So getting bit by an animal and not going and getting this done. I mean, sometimes it's like, okay, if your dog bites you and you know your dog's up on its shots and stuff, then you could be like, all right, I'm not gonna go, you know? But but really it's just it it's funny because I was just thinking about this actually. Do you remember years ago, Lillian was like 18 months old and we were at some art show and some guy was carrying around one of those like Paris Hilton purse dogs that it had like a Louis Vuitton outfit on that was more expensive than any of the clothes I was wearing. And it was like a Pomeranian, like a little tiny like miniature Pomeranian thing. And it bit Lillian on the hand. It like she thought it was like a doll and like hit it on the face and it bit her, right?
Mhm.
So and it didn't really even hurt her. It just was like a little nibble thing. But I just took her to the doctor right away and he was just like, "All right, well, we have to figure out." So I got the guy's information and figured out that the dog had shots and stuff because it's like I'm like, I'm sure the dog is up to date on its shots because it's full out in Louis Vuitton and gets like a spa treatment every night,
Yeah, but
right?
sometimes people prioritize the Louis
Yeah.
Vuitton outfits over the medical care.
Exactly. But so it all worked out well, but that's why they want to know because you can get this rabies the post-exposure prophylaxis and it will prevent you from getting it. So because rabies is 100% fatal. Like there's a couple people that have survived in history, a couple people. Like you don't want it ever. So it's just better to get it treated and I guess this is just like one of uh, I don't even know that you could even plan something like this. I just don't see how else it's possible.
This is a storyline on 1923 right now where that girl we were talking about a couple weeks ago that like has so much like Botox and fillers, she's like not believable at all. Her character like gets bit by a wolf that has rabies and she has to get these insane, you know how they like make needles from back then look so crazy in TV and movies, but it's just this horrible thing that she has to get like every episode. I hate watching it. But it looks just horrible.
The thing is that back in the day, rabies used to be an issue, and it's one of these really cool things where animal medicine and human medicine came together and got it under control, and it's mostly because of vaccinating the
Mhm.
animals, but then it's also when people get exposed because like every there's no point of every single person getting vaccinated for that because why add another one of the thousands that we need to get anyway, right? But like if you're at a higher exposure, like people that work at vet offices and stuff, they should be protected against that because there's a very high risk they're going to get bit by an animal, right? Um, but it's cool. Like it used to be really present in dogs even back in the day before the vaccinations and stuff. So it really has gone away and it's not killing thousands of people every year like it used to. And now it's just 10 and one of these 10 just so happened to donate an organ and I It sucks actually because the guy got a second chance at life and got a kidney, and then he died anyway because of rabies of all like, it's so outrageous.
All right, so let's get on to this last story, which this one is truly one of the most unbelievable ones for me, which is the 66-year-old woman in Germany has given birth to her 10th child via C-section.
Like, why would you even want to have a baby when you're 66? I just don't I can't
Well,
wrap my brain around it.
it looks like she had 2 children when she was younger, and then since she turned 53, she's had 8 kids, including twins.
And I mean, is she married and stuff? Like her husband's on board with this too, or what's happening there?
I mean, there wasn't really much background on her other than the fact that she's a museum director, but I don't know why you would choose to do this. I mean, she was saying that she wanted a large family and all this stuff. And she made sure to let everybody know she did not use any reproductive technologies to conceive the children. But I just think
Listen,
it's crazy.
it's possible because you can get something that's like late onset menopause. I mean, think about even there's such a variety of a window of when women could go into menopause, right? So think about when you were a kid even and getting your period. It's like I knew kids that got it when they were 8 years old, and like my mom got hers when she was 17 years old. It's just a huge variation in ages. And, they'll call it precocious or late set puberty and everything like that. But when you're talking about menopause, it's considered anything after 55 years old is considered to be late onset. But I found a really cool case actually of this 65-year-old lady that went to the ER after she had a cerebral vascular accident, so like a stroke or something, like a mini stroke or something. And when she was getting examined, they noted that she had vaginal bleeding, and they consulted gynecology and they talked to her, and when she got interviewed, she was like, "Yeah, I still get my period." And they were like, are you sure?" And because when a woman it is in her 60s, 65-year-old woman is bleeding, they consider that to be like it's a bad sign, and it could be a sign of endometrial cancer or something like that. So they interviewed her and she was like, "No, I still get my period." So they wanted to check because they're like, you could have been bleeding for a while and you might have like uterine cancer or something like that. And sure enough, like her blood work, her hormones were checked and they were at the premenopausal range at 65 years old. So
Wow.
it's really interesting, right? So I mean, it sounds terrible to an extent because listen, like just because I'm a person that's kind of going through that right now, I always was like, I can't wait till I get stop getting my period. And now that like I really haven't had it much in the past 2 years, I'm like, I kind of wish I had it back because I felt like at least it was, like, very regular, like, every whatever it is, 28 days or whatever, you would get it, and you would know that you would feel like shit for a couple days, but then you would know it would go away, and now it's just, like, all of that is kinda all over the place, and I just hate that. But just thinking about bleeding like a period at 65 years old just sounds terrible to me. But this is what could have possibly happened with this lady, that she still is ovulating. And I mean, after you're 45 years old, they're like the chances of you having a baby naturally just diminish even after 35 really. Um so it's totally possible that she's not lying about that.
No, I don't think she's lying about it, but I'm like sitting here as a 30-year-old. Like, I don't even want to put my body at 30 years old through the process of giving birth, right? Let alone having a C section, let alone having 8 C-sections. Because isn't that an incredibly intense surgery? It's not just like
Yeah, and
something light.
you risk that every single time just opening up that wound again, and you could have complications associated with that and adhesions like when your organs stick to your other organs. And like in the case of the C-section, it could be like your uterus could stick to the front of your abdominal wall, and it could cause a lot of problems. Like the thing is that so many people that have babies and stuff, and if you ask them all their experiences, everyone has a different one. Some people just don't think pregnancy is like that big of a deal at all, and they just go about their life and pop the kid out, and then they're just like fine the whole time. And other women are like, this is the worst thing ever. I don't want to do this again. And it's like for me, like I don't think it was the greatest thing ever. I'm kind of neutral about it. Like um, I mean, I'm just like older now, so I wouldn't consider it, but it wasn't the worst thing ever, but also I didn't think it was great. Like my mom thinks it was the best thing ever being pregnant. She thought it was amazing.
Oh my God. I
And
can't even believe that.
But you see people all the time that are just like, "Yeah, this is great." Like, and they gain like 20 pounds the whole time and they're exercising the whole time and like, no, I just like there's certain things about that. I mean, it's a good experience, of course, but like so but some people just I mean, she's kind of like, "Okay, I'm 66 and I'm going to see if this could happen." And if it happens, like she's on the news now, right, for it, right?
I mean, can I just say something a little controversial? Like, I I keep seeing all this press about how awesome it is that Robert De Niro, who's 81 years old, has this baby, right? And how he's such a great dad. And I'm like, is it not selfish to have a child when you're 80 years old, like giving them basically no life with you?
But like this woman we're talking about, 66, like my grandmom died when she was 99. So, I mean, technically, like this lady could live another 30 years and like that's
Yeah, but what's the likelihood she's gonna live another 30 years? Because, like, what's
I
the
don't know, she
average life
seems like she's
expectancy?
healthier than I am for sure.
I don't
Um,
know. I just think it's this weird thing, and like, if you want to do it, do whatever you want. I just think it's like bizarre when you want to have a kid when you're in your 50s and 60s and 70s, and like Robert De Niro in your 80s, you know? It's just bizarre to me.
yeah, but then like what are you going to make a magic age? It's the same thing as telling people they can't have what people of course like listen, I'll sit there and be the first to be like this lady's a moron and so are people that have 20 kids and everything like that, but like it's not my life so I don't care, right? It's you can't put an age cuz that's you just can't do that. That's like one of your free rights as a human being is to have children like whenever you want and right?
Yeah, I guess it's just a thought I've had because I've been seeing all this stuff. Like, I don't even know why Robert De Niro keeps popping up
Cuz
in my
like
news cycle,
the
but
way that the way that you're saying it is like I understand what you're saying, but it's because like most people I would say have this idea of what an ideal life for a child should be. But that doesn't mean that other children's life are not as valid because then you're getting into like then people would say, okay, and well, actually, people have said and do say when you're a teenager and you get pregnant that you should automatically get an abortion because what kind of life would that kid have? And like you're a prime example of that, right?
yeah.
So, so like you definitely didn't have what would be considered an ideal life as a child because your mom and dad weren't together and you lived at the house with your grandparents and your uncle is almost like your brother and like just some weird backwoods shit, right? But like you had a good life and you're a successful adult and that doesn't mean that like your life wasn't worth being born because you weren't born into an ideal situation. And honestly, like if you just look around at everyone you know, there's a lot of kids that are living in situations that you're like that's probably not the best thing for the kid, but they're
Well,
they're fine.
I guess my mind, I don't even think about it when it comes to terms with like our situation with you having me so young. I think I go there to it being selfish because I immediately think like 80 years old equals death soon, equals like this. And I know that's like insane to think that way. But it always crosses my mind like these people are having kids so old and then like their kid has no life with them, and obviously in Robert De Niro's case, for example, he has the means to give this kid a really good
Well,
life, but in
that's the thing
some people's case they don't.
with famous people though, like if you when you hear about some of the way that these people live, it's like their kids do you think like Kardashians kids really have much of a life with them? Like really? Like I know that you show it on TV and this and that, but like how
No.
much time are they actually like if you think about a traditional parent that's getting their kids from school and coming home and sitting down and doing their homework and going to their sports games and doing this and doing that, like a lot of these famous parents aren't like very involved like that anyway. There's always like some nanny with them all the time, this, that, and the other. They might not even like go to school. They might like I'm sure some of them travel with them, but I think that a lot of them they're just in this kind of life that other people take care of the children. So it's like, so when De Niro dies, like who cares? Because he could just pay someone and leave money in his will for someone else to take care of the kid. And really, the kid's mom is like 30 or something, right?
Yeah, I guess my
It
greater problem is when people are like I'm not talking about women that are like 40 having a baby. I'm talking about women that are
So
like
what's
this lady
so
above
what's your
65.
what's your cutoff age then? When you're going to Congress to to
I'm
put forth this
I'm
new
not
law, what's
going to
the cut age?
Congress. I'm just saying like I
Because
don't
then you could say the same thing like, oh, okay, if you work and you make $15 an hour, like you have no business having a kid because you can't afford it. Like, and that it's not like
know. Well,
you can't say that. Like,
I
you
don't
just
think
can't say
I'm
that.
articulating my thoughts correctly on this, but we're like really deep into this conversation by now.
Well,
But
because it's interesting. It's interesting to talk about. Like,
well, I think
and
it plays into my greater problem with people having like kids to check a box. So like I would all right, like this is where I'm thinking about it. I group these people that are elderly having babies in the same box as people that have kids just for like Facebook photos that are under the care of a nanny 24/7 like you're saying. Like it's just selfish to have kids just to have kids, not because like
yeah.
you
Well,
want a
listen,
fulfilling life.
you could feel that way all you want, but if you really boil it down, like a lot of people aren't having kids for the right reasons. So
I
it's,
don't think
you
most
know,
people are
actually,
actually.
like if you sat there and were like, this kid was born in a situation that like both parents were done with their education and they owned their house already and their student loans were paid off and they were married and this, that, and the other, and then they had this kid that they planned for it,
No,
you'd be
I
like,
don't
that's 1% of the population. Like
no,
most
but
people are like getting knocked up all over the place, like
I
doing
don't think that's
whatever.
realistic either, that, like, that's a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm talking about, like, people that strictly have no interest at all in said child, but go ahead procreating them anyway. Like,
Well,
kids are born of all different circumstances, but they end up in loving situations. They don't have to have, like, the most ideal situation, obviously.
I think that like in society, like most there's a lot of pressure to have children. And it takes a lot for a person to say, like, you know what, I don't really think I like being around kids and I don't want to have them. And a lot of people get pressure from their family and stuff. And a lot of times you think that you're going to have a kid. Every person that is doesn't have a kid thinks they're going to be the best person, the best parent ever. And then you have the kid and then you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, this is really hard. And some people just don't enjoy it. And other people think maybe like I lucked out because I feel like I don't really enjoy being around other people, like around kids a lot. Like if me and Gabe go on a date, I don't want to sit anywhere near a table that has children. Like I don't want it. I don't care. Think I'm a dickhead, whatever. Like I just don't like that. I don't want to be around kids like that. I do have love for my friends' kids because they're almost like cousins to my kids. They're like family to me, you know? But, like, in general, I'm not a person that's just like, "Oh, your kid is so cute." Like, I just don't really I'm not really attached like that. But I mean, for me, like, let's pretend I didn't have any kids. I would take the chance and be like, "Well, hopefully I'll love my kids." I know I don't really like kids, but, like, I might like I should like mine because 'cause they're mine, and I do luckily, but, like, sometimes I think people have the kids and they never get that bond. They're just kinda, like, not into it. And you see, like, me and Gabe's life all the time. It's just, like, we're kind of it's, like, kids, kids, kids all the time, and some people don't wanna give up the, like, going out to dinner at 9 o'clock and hanging out with their friends on the beach and this and that, like, so people, like, resent their kids then when they have them.
Yeah, I think I'm ultra
This is the
sensitive.
biggest this is, like, the biggest rant ever.
I know. I was just gonna say, like, I think I'm just so ultra sensitive to this because of writing up a Ruby Frank for the last 2 weeks and just being like, I don't think she had kids for the purpose of having a YouTube channel, but then we see, that other chick that adopted that Huxley child for content specifically, and you're just like, what are you doing? It's just so
Yeah,
fucked up.
that's interesting with the family content creators because it seems like the fame of all of it just kind of goes to their head a little bit. And I really think when you even hear about the Ruby Frank story, like when you hear about the beginning of their life, it seemed like it probably was something that she wanted and was into. And then as soon as she started getting famous and like all this weird stuff happened with meeting that person and this and that, like it just like whatever tendencies she had to be like a meaner, sterner mom turned into something super pathologic. And you see that sometimes, and I mean we have a couple cases like that with these family vlog people.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that rant was worth going on, and it probably didn't
All
make
right.
sense to our
Well,
listeners, but it happens.
now that yeah, exactly. Well, no, I think it'll make sense. I think it'll make sense to people because the first instinct you always have is like people shouldn't do that, but like it's just like not fair to be like that.
No, and I guess that's what
I
I'm getting at.
you could judge. Just I don't mind judging people. It's more like when you
Well,
then
we know you don't mind judging people.
but like I judge people, but I would never like say, "Oh, there should be laws against," like people could do whatever they wanna do. I'm against a lot of things people do, but I feel like they should have that right to do it. How's that?
Exactly. I'm in the mindset of do whatever you want, but, like, I'm not gonna go to Congress and be like, "You need to put this, like, age on people that have children." Like, that's ridiculous, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like it isn't strange to me. But, alright, I guess we should move on to the questions now because we just went on, like, a 15-minute rant about nonsense. Alright, every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys can head over to our story and ask us whatever you want. First question's from friend of the pod, Laura Lee.
I
How many
knew this
car
question was from her. I knew it. I knew it.
She said, "How many car accidents are caused because of those stupid road signs with the witty sayings?"
Oh my god, they are the
Explain this to
worst.
people that don't live in New Jersey because I don't know if this happens
It
everywhere.
does happen. I feel like I saw it on my trip maybe in Ohio. So so New Jersey put forth this campaign which just drives me freaking crazy because like my tax dollars are being spent on this. That they put up, you know those signs that they put that say the electric signs that'll say like road closed or merge right or something like that. It's one of those signs and now they put these sayings on them to try to get people to like not drink and drive or to put their seatbelt on or to not text and drive. There's all these messages they put on it. And I guess the thing that really makes me the most mad of it is that, you know, you think about all of these people in Congress and stuff like sitting around and making this law and just how much money this campaign actually cost. And the worst part is that the signs are terrible. They're not funny. They're terrible. I wish I had an example of one
No,
now.
I have an example of my favorite one that was circulating a couple months ago. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
It's from California. "Do not touch your partner's private part while he or she is driving."
Is that real?
I think so.
No, so ours that's possible that would say I don't think that that's real. That
I
doesn't
don't
sound
know.
real because a child could read that and that's not appropriate. But th- I probably could look through my text
Alright, here's
messages.
some I'm looking right now. So
They're usually like they make ones that are applicable to the shore because we live near the shore and it'll just and they rhyme and they're just terrible and you're like they can't find any like I want to sit down and write them and send them in like a bunch of wittier things that would be quirky and funny.
alright, ready? No no Valentine, your seatbelt will hold you.
Yes, that is one I saw. There's one for St. Patrick's Day and there's definitely like shore related ones about like there was something about a shark bite or something. I don't
Wait,
even know.
only Rudolph should be lit. Drive high, get DUI.
Yeah. Just they're so dumb. So yes, Laura. So me and Laura are constantly talking about those signs. So when I read that, I was like, either she sent this question in or I'm gonna call her right after this and be like, dude, someone else hates this too, or
I mean,
whatever.
they're just so bad. And like with ChatGPT existing, like you really can't come up with better ones.
There was one with the Grinch at
I should
Christmas
have taken
time.
a picture. Remember?
I probably have them because I feel like me and Laura send them to each other, but they were terrible. And like, I'm sure they have another campaign going on too about like, texting and driving and motorcyclists on the streets and not hitting them. And it's like you hear these commercials all the time and they're like, what if you didn't text it and you didn't hit the person? You would change their life. Now this message has been life-changing. You're like, no, it hasn't actually. Nobody is listening. Like, this is terrible. This is the only thing that it's just, I just don't understand.
Remember in Barrington there was that lumber place? It's like a brewery now.
Yeah, that dude should write them because he's hilarious.
Wait, I have 2 of them. I from 2016.
So this was like a random like lumber place, family owned place though, and he used to write hilarious things. It would just be like, well, I saw one on a church once that was just like, if you give Satan an inch, he'll become a ruler.
Oh my god.
Like things like that, like a local church, but I
This
like
guy's
they're like funny, like stuff
one
like
of
that.
his says, "Ever tried groundhog? Kinda tastes like hamster." Like, so random on a sign. And then wait, I have a Valentine's Day one too, I just have to find it. But, like, when we're talking we don't need witty road signs. We understand how, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like Laura's point, they probably cause people to there. That's the thing with these things that they put forth. There's no metrics to determine if they're actually doing anything. So
Alright, so his Valentine's one says, "Be our Valentine, we have wood, hardwood."
yeah, that one was good.
Yeah, but the ones around here, they're so bad that they're funny. And I don't know if that's their goal, but I would say they probably aren't causing car accidents,
No,
but
I
they're
just the reason I get mad is because like I just picture like corporate meetings and like some woman in a businesswoman special with her like high heels, that the type that carry their sneakers to work with them and stuff, and like just
yeah.
walking around and be like, okay, guys, like around this big mahogany desk.
I mean,
Like, what do you think of this one?
anytime I see a bad commercial or billboard or something like that, I'll say to Ricky, like, "Do you know how many people had to approve this in a room?"
It's true.
It's ridiculous. All right, second question. When doing an autopsy, can you tell if somebody has broken bones if they have healed?
Yeah, so when we do an autopsy, we don't typically examine bones to the point where we would be able to see that, except maybe when we open the abdominal cavity, we could really see the spine pretty well and the ribs. So if someone had a broken rib previously, we could see evidence of that for sure. If you're talking about a leg or something like that, that would be a little bit more iffy because we don't typically dissect the tissue off of long bones like the legs or the arms like that. So we wouldn't see it grossly unless, of course, let's say for example, someone found human bones in the woods. They would get a forensic anthropologist to look at the bones, and those scientists for sure would be able to look at the bones and be able to determine if there was previously healed fractures. But like we wouldn't actually be looking at them for our purposes. And then obviously though, like we have access to x-ray at autopsy, so if we x-rayed someone, we would be able to determine if they had a previous broken bone. Just because when a bone breaks, this just depends, like especially in abuse cases and stuff, because sometimes like kids will get abused and then the parents or the people that are abusing them don't take them to the hospital, so their bones don't heal properly like you would if you went and got a cast put on. So it has very specific looks to the bones, or any people. Sometimes people break a rib and they don't really realize it or something like that. It just has like a different appearance. So yeah, in that case, if we image the body, we would be able to see it as well.
All right, last. What lunch do you typically have on a work day?
Like when we're recording, I just housed like 50 seedless peppers and I'm about to go eat goat cheese in a bowl.
Well, yesterday we had
Nothing good.
crepes.
Yesterday wasn't really considered a work day.
No, but we had crepes
Yeah,
yesterday.
when we're sitting here, I just eat like little things. But I cook dinner almost every night and we have a pretty big dinner every night, so I just try to kind of like snack on things throughout the day, coffee, little things here and there, and then at dinner I'll like house a lot of food. So, I just like we don't really have time when we're recording and stuff, but a few minutes to just like inhale something real quick.
Yeah, like I'll usually just have leftovers, or if I have something in the freezer, I could just pop in the air fryer real quick, or on a desperate day, just a bowl of cereal or like toast. And then I'll just cook dinner early.
Oh, I forgot I got those things I got a box for myself at Trader Joe's, those coconut ball things. I wanted to try them, but I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
They're delicious.
Okay, that's all I want to say. Maria's husband says they taste or smell like, so I just don't even want to think about it because I'm not going to want to eat it now.
I'm not saying that on here because I think they're delicious and he
All
was
right,
being
good.
ridiculous. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Please leave us a 5-star written review on Apple. And if you have a story for us, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com.
See ya. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.